the end of this first African Interparliamentary Conference on Family Values and Sovereignty. We had 23 countries that attended this conference. The conference was attended by deputy speakers, members of parliament, religious leaders, cultural leaders, academicians, and other invited dignitaries. And it was very interactive. We now have a communique arising out of the deliberations that were held during the 2 days conference. Whereas we members of Parliament of Uganda, under the Parliamentary Forum on Family, organized this conference in partnership with the African Bar Association and the Foundation for African Cultural Heritage here in Entebbe at Imperial Golf View Hotel. The dialogue was on global challenges to the protection of the African child, the African family, and African culture and values. Whereas members of the African parliaments representing constituencies across the African continent examined the regional, sub-regional, and national threats to the sovereign rights of African states, the African family as the fundamental unit of society, and the African child in the context of health, education, and human rights. And whereas international institutions and donor countries have always provided aid to address the multifaceted needs of our countries, yet this support often has been conditioned on requirements to implement policies and programs which directly undermine our national sovereignty, as well as African culture and family values, and our children's well-being. All domestic issues well within the competence of the African parliaments. Whereas we as parliamentarians, the representatives of our respective people, who are collectively the custodians of our culture and family values, enshrined in our respective constitutions, laws, policies, and practices, deem it critical that African parliaments come together to discuss the way forward in light of the pervasive forms of cultural, sexual, and social threats that are escalating at the international, regional, sub-regional, national, and local levels. Whereas Articles 18, 22, and 27, 2, and 29 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights stipulates that the state shall assist the family, which is the custodian of all morals and traditional values recognized by the community, in order to preserve and strengthen positive African cultural values in their relations with other members of the society in the spirit of tolerance, dialogue, and consultation, and in general to contribute to the promotion of the moral well-being of African society. Whereas the Constitution and Acts of Parliament of the African countries mandates the states to protect the family as the basic unit of society and necessary basis of social order, and to protect the cultural values of the people. Consequently, we issue this joint communique to charter a new course to strongly tackle the pervasive forms of emerging threats to the national sovereignty and the cherished cultural values of African countries. And also, consequently, we also issue this communique to foster dialogue with additional parliamentarians, legal experts, and scholars on policies and programs which African countries are being pressured to implement that negatively impact our national sovereignty, cultural heritage, family, and our children.
The conference